Hello everyone, welcome back to another part. This is part 3, chapter 3, grade 6 in the earliest cities. So in the last two videos, we happened to finish all these topics from here to here. Raw material, bead making, sending of people to distant locations, and also where all did they used to travel. It may be Oman, it may be Iran, Afghanistan. Even they happen to go to Rajasthan, Gujarat, Karnataka to get very precious stones. Now we are going to dig deep and look as to what food did they used to eat and a closer look of Harappan towns in Gujarat and the mystery of the end. How did all this come to an end? So let's get started once again with the topic that we covered in the last class also, food. So as I told you, there was elaborate living system where they had good drainage, street lighting, perfect, and also 1 and 2 storied houses. We also find that there was this ruler who used to send people off to distant locations. So there were two sets of people. Set of the people, they were basically living in the city. And the second one, they were living in the countryside. When I say countryside, what comes to your mind is the rural area. So the people living in cities, they were involved in various activities. They could be the craftsmen, they could be the merchants, they could be the rulers, they could be the scribes, different activities. And how they were fed? They were basically fed by the people living in the rural area or people living in the countryside who started to grow different kind of crops. For example, we had wheat, we have barley, the growth of pulses, peas, rice, linseed, mustard, and also sesame. We get oil from this. So to order to cultivate all this, they used to have a very special device that's called a plow, like this, that you use to dig the crop, to dig the field. So this is what you use. Generally, the farmers happen to use it for the agricultural equipment. Now we have the tractors. It's somewhat like, I'll show you in the pic, like this. So this is this section here. This is what you call it as plow. Now we have it in mechanical form, but back then people used to get it done using their hand and other equipment. So this is basically a plow. I'll show you once again this. Right? So they used to make use of these plows to, dig the earth. And also they used it to plant the seeds, because we already know these people were specialists, they were craftsmen. Plus, apart from using the plow, they also had elaborate irrigation system, because here in northwest India's monsoons are very seasonal. As you know, we've got seasonal reversal of rain. So in order to supply water, they usually used to store water and supply it to the field so that plants could grow. They used to settle around some pasture area where they allowed their animals to graze. And if, seasons used to change, they used to take them to some other places where there was more availability of grass and water so that they can sustain the growth of their animals also, because they were involved in rearing activities. So they used to have different crops, different fruits back then. For example, here you can see these bear. They were involved in hunting, they were involved in fishing. Okay. So now let's see what all did the people. Now, I think it's more like people living nowadays and people having a life back then. So let's have a closer look at the Harappan towns, especially in Gujarat. Now, if you all guys would probably just have a look here. This is Gujarat's area. And somewhere here, you've got a very important location that is called Dholavira. Now, this Dholavira, it is located in the Khadir Bet, the region of Run of Kutch. So it's located there, the Run of Kutch. So here you have this Dholavira area. So this is the area because it's very near to the water and it's somewhere in mid of that water body. No, here we've got small watery section back then. So that water segment where you have this location of Dholavira. To be specific, I'll show you another map. Here you guys can see. To be exact, this is the location of Dholavira. So this is in Khadir Bet, which is also called BET, or you can call it Bet, VEYT. So this location is there where we have the ruins of ancient Indus Valley civilization. It is the area that was very fertile, which had the availability of fresh water. And something very special about Dholavira is, like in the last class, if you guys remember, we talked of the city being divided into two sections. The west one, which was smaller in area and yet it was higher, that was called Citadel. The place in Dholavira, it is not divided into two sections. It's rather divided into three sections. Yes, there's something special here. So remember about Dholavira whenever you mark it on the map here. So I'll write it, it's divided into three sections. And each part is it's surrounded by that massive, huge layers of stone walls like you have nowadays as gateways to the big, big pillars where kings used to live. So we've got that massive walls that surround each of those sections. And these people, they used to write script not on stone, but something very important was they started to write a script on white stones, which is something we don't find at a lot of places of Harappan civilization. We also find something written on such seals that gives us an idea of how people used to live. If I talk of this another location that you see, it's Lothal. This Lothal is right beside the tributary of Sabarmati. Here, this is Gulf of Khambat, this area. So this Lothal, as you can see, this is one of the river going. So it is basically a tributary, one of the rivers that contributes its water to Sabarmati. So Dholavira is located here, and it is the place where people used to get most of the raw material, stones, shell, metal. And here we find many places that had storehouse. So that gives us the impression that people used to store a lot of important things. It could be the seals, it could be the food stuff. That is all located here. So many of these places, of course, they have something very much in special that they had compartmentalized their living section, and they had some places that you call it storehouse where they used to store their places, their stuff. So this Lothal, it is a very important place that is very near to Gulf of Khambat, where we see the making of precious stones. So we find evidence of those precious stones like this. People might be involved into this, and there we have found a storehouse, which gives us the impression that this place probably served as a building, where bead making was being done, where precious stones were being used, and we've got all those finished beads. Now let's talk about how it all came to an end. When everybody was having a gala good time and, things were going in the right direction, there seems to be some problem about the ending. So unlike all the movies that we have in Bollywood, this civilization did not come to an end. We do not have reasons as to why, but every historian, archaeologist is trying to decipher or give explanation to it in one way or the other. So there might have been some reason. We'll look into it, but let's see why people had to abandon the place. It's very important to know why they were running like this. So they started to run for their life around 3,900 years ago. Now, what was the reason why they started to quit the places? Why they started to discontinue the use of all those seals that they made, the beads that they made, the raw material that they got from after covering so long distances? is basically because we get the impression that it all came to an end because the river might have dried up. And there were enough people living there, animals who survived on that river, who existed based on, who had their life based on that river. So if probably one of the reasons could be the river came to an end. The second set of people explained that there might have been some sort of floods that destroyed the green cover. Some scholars also suggest that, there was some kind of deforestation that took place. Because, all these bead making industries, a lot of other craftsmen, they definitely needed fuel for baking bricks, for the use of copper ores. So that might be one of the reasons that the wood might have come to an end. A lot of deforestation might have taken place. And this location that you find here, Mohenjo-daro, this one. Here people have found a pile of garbage, piled up garbage on the streets, which suggests that there might be some kind of breakdown that might have taken place. Maybe the drainage had stopped working, or the impressive system in which the houses were built, it didn't work due to some reasons. So the system broke down all in all, because, when you see the garbage piled on the roads, it gives the impression that there might have been some problem with the drains. But that does not suggest that the people didn't find a way out to live. It's just an impression that we found there in Mohenjo-daro, the garbage piled up on the streets, the drainage problem. Or another problem, or another reason that we find is, the fourth one, is that rulers lost their control. Just because we didn't have hereditary rulers, there might be some kind of merchants who ruled the society. So when the rulers lost pace, definitely people who were living there, which is now considered as Sindh or West Punjab, they just abandoned the place. Like this person who's trying to leave, they all abandoned the place. And maybe they started to move towards the East India, here, towards the interior, or maybe towards the south. That is why new cities emerged here 400 years later. So, river drying, garbage, all that we've learned left people with no choice but to abandon the place. And then we see 400 years down the line, smaller cities coming up, the west and eastern and southern part of India. So that's all for today's session. Thank you very much. In case you like the session, please hit the subscribe button and leave in your comment below. I'll see you in the next class. Take care.